In the previous lessons, we learned about variables and their naming conventions. Now, in this lecture, we are going to learn about the data types in Python programming language. So what are these data types? How are they even relevant? Let us try to understand the meaning of data types first. Data type of a variable tells us about the kind of data that variable can have. Generally, we have three major data types in Python programming language. These are integer, float, and string. Let us try to understand each of these data types in Python. Integer is a data type which represents whole numbers like 8, 45, 965, 2, etc. So all the variables having these kinds of values in whole numbers are integers. Similarly, float is a data type which represents decimals like 2.5, 85.1, etc. So all the variables having decimal values are categorized as float data type. String is a data type which represents text like Ram, car, flower, which means all the variables having values as text will be categorized as strings. Finally, we have understood the meaning of different data types in Python. But how do we define the data types for our variables in Python? The best part here is we do not need to tell Python about the data type of any variable. Yes, you heard it right. Now, Python is really very smart, which means it can automatically identify the data type of the variable on its own. So if we write x equal to 4, Python will automatically know that x contains a whole number, which means it is an integer. If we write y equal to India, Python will know that y contains a text value, so it's a string. If we write z equal to 3.5, Python knows z contains a decimal, so it's a float. Well, I hope that you have understood the different types of data types used in Python. You can check the data type of any variable in Python programming language. For that, we are going to use an inbuilt function. Now, the question is, what are inbuilt functions? Function which is already defined in a program or programming framework with a set of statements which together perform a task, and it is called a built-in function. So users need not create this type of function and can use it directly in their program or application. We will use the type function which will help us to know the data type of a Python variable. Let us try. We will use the print function on top of the type function. Type function will determine the type of the data type of a given variable, and print function will output it. The code is on your screen. Notice the brackets starting and closing. This is called enclosure of the brackets or functions. Print function bracket has an enclosed type function. Type function has an enclosed variable x. The final answer is telling us that x variable is an integer type, y variable is a string, and z variable is a float. So this is how we can check the type of already created variable. Now let us learn about one of the most important concepts, and that is used really very widely. What is it? Typecasting. Typecasting in Python refers to the process of converting the data type of a variable or value from one type to another. Python provides built-in functions that allow you to perform typecasting. The commonly used typecasting functions in Python include: for typecasting, Python again has inbuilt functions. The three typecasting functions are int, float, string. Int function is used to convert a string or float value to an integer value. Float function converts an integer or string value to a float value. String function converts an integer or float value to a string value. Let's see some examples. Here we have declared a variable named x and assigned a value of 4. You can see it on your screen. You can see that when we use the type function to check the data type of x, we get an output as integer, which means x is containing an integer value. Now let's try to typecast the variable x into a string. You can see the code on your screen. You can see that we have successfully changed the data type of x variable from an integer to a string. So in this section, we learned about naming conventions of variables, declaration of variables, different data types used in Python.